Hello, good afternoon. It's time for the marketplace. My name is Charles Aite. Here's what's coming up this afternoon. We analyze the framework underpinning the 2021 budget ahead of its presentation on Friday. Also, as Ghana's housing deficit deepens, we hear from the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. Of course, they are making specific demands ahead of the 2021 budget. We get to hear from them. Plus, following a dream, we hear the story of a graduate of a paramedic and emergency care unit quitting her job for pig farming. We get to hear her story on the bulletin. My name is Charles Aite. We have all these coming up in this edition after this break. Do stay. Well, welcome to the program. Friday's presentation of the budget will be read by the Majority Leader in Parliament, Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu. Now, there is no doubt that the focus of the budget will be that of COVID-19 and other issues regarding payment systems and matters regarding investment. A bit of some highlights of the economic constraint of COVID-19. We shall be bringing that to you shortly. But even as we digest the import of the budget this Friday, we're also joined by Professor Godfred Bokpen, who's going to be leading a particular discussion this afternoon regarding Imani Ghana and that of the GIZ on the need for businesses to rake in the benefits of the Continental Free Trade Agreement area. He joins us via Zoom. Professor, we're so grateful that he joined us for this discussion. First of all, we believe that this event is going to be taking place this afternoon at 2 p.m. Help us with the highlights of this particular event this afternoon.
All right, thank you, and good afternoon to our cherished viewers. It's going to be an exciting dialogue. We do know that the African Continental Free Trade has come to fruition in terms of implementation. A lot of discussions have been held over the period by various stakeholders and all of that. To a large extent, the bulk of what we have been told are more in terms of the theoretical benefits that would come as a result of the AFCFTA. But what it also means is that there's a lot of work that has to be done to translate the theoretical benefit into actual in a manner that creates jobs for the continent, because the African continent is considered a young continent. We have more youth than any other continent. That means that we need to create decent, sustainable jobs for the youth in order to contain the threat that is coming from that sector. To that extent, the question is, how much of the AFCFTA rules, operational guidelines, and all of that do Ghanaian businesses know? You can't take advantage of what you don't know, because it has procedures, it has rules, it has mechanisms, and all of that. So this collaboration with GIZ, with the money, is to actually open it up to Ghanaian businesses in terms of understanding the fine details in order to take advantage of that. We know that our economies are predominantly SME-based, and to that extent, this is actually for them. This is a bigger market for them. We are talking about a combined population of 1.2 billion people, projected to hit 1.4 billion by 2040. That's a huge market. Population is market. So the idea is that beyond the Ghanaian market, you have this pool. How do we take advantage of? How do we navigate our way through and all of that? Beyond that, we're also talking about a market size in excess of over $3 trillion that is available to every business, every entrepreneur on the continent. How do you take advantage of that? So the mere theoretical discussions that we have seen so far, AFCFTA will help the continent and all of that. It may not happen if we don't put in place the right reforms and the discussions and the knowledge dissemination that equips our businesses to be able to take advantage, particularly for Ghana. Why am I saying so? Even though we have been selected to host the Secretariat, it has nothing to do with our ability to host the gains from the AFCFTA. There will be some physical losses at the macro level because of tariff reformation and all of that. How do we offset that? By creating the enabling environment for Ghanaian businesses to be able to take advantage of that. So this afternoon, from 3 o'clock at Alisa Hotel, in terms of those who are coming physically, and then those who are also joining online, we'll be looking at all these things. How enabling is the enabling environment for Ghanaian businesses in order to compete? Because we are not only competing with We are not only competing with somebody in Cape Coast, somebody in Kumasi. You're actually competing with somebody from Senegal, somebody from Kenya, somebody from South Africa, even our jollof rice. There's going to be competition for it and all of that. So these are the issues.
I can imagine, but Professor, even as we center on the Continental Free Trade Agreement area, I believe that it also sits on the expectations for this year's budget presentation on Friday. Of course, we've had so much expectation from the business community. You are an economist, and of course, looking at the numbers ever since COVID-19 hit, Ghana's revenue shortfalls has been that of a shocking move, although not much more surprising. What remains your expectation when it comes to revenue generation and even that of projections in this year's budget?
Indeed, let me start off this way, that we have to be moderate with our expectations because COVID has done a lot of havoc to our economy. We are not alone, even though in terms of the real impact, we can see differentials across the continent. But broadly, the impact is very pervasive. To that extent, in the presence of higher expenditure, and new expenditure patterns have emerged. That has to be contained. In the face of collapsed revenue envelope and ballooning public debt, there's the need for government to look at the macro framework in order not to throw it overboard and create instability. To that extent, I would urge that we are a bit cautious in terms of our expectations. Of course, you could get disappointed anyway, because budget at its baseline it represents intentions. We cannot substitute that for accomplishment. Beyond the presentation of the budget, that is where work starts. How do we convert all the expectations and the projections into actual and all of that? Just look at what happened in 2020. A couple of months before 2020, let's say November, we presented the 2020 budget. We were very hopeful. The assumptions were there. We'll grow GDP by 6.8 or 6.5%. Revenue grew by this. 3 months into the implementation of the budget, COVID hit. And all the assumptions could no longer hold, and we had to revise that, and growth decelerated sharply.
So these are projections. We must be modest.
There is the need for government to anchor the expectations of the private sector in this budget and align that with the takeoff of the AFCFTA in terms of how the budget creates the enabling environment for Ghanaians to take advantage of the opportunities that are inherent in the AFCFTA. So to that extent, the signaling effect from there is particularly important for all of us. And we know that government first takes from the citizens in terms of taxes and then provides whatever they want to provide. But we also do know that given the impact of COVID-19 on the private sector, their cash flow generation and all of that, we must be very careful in burdening the faithful few. What do we do then? Government must take a hard look at the exemption regime and make sure that we rationalize the exemptions so that particularly multinationals that are in tax-paying position that are not doing so because of the way the exemption regime is structured is actually addressed. How do we block the leakages in our revenue envelope? Government must also signal a lean government as a response to the impact of COVID-19 and make sure that we reduce unnecessary budget on expenditures that we can actually eliminate, both at the executive level, judiciary, legislature, and all of that, so that we can free our fiscal space to do that which has to be done to make sure that Ghana is able to take advantage of this.
Professor Bokpem, we're so grateful that he joined us. He's a senior fellow with Imani Africa. But let's still stay on the 2021 budget presentation, which comes off on Friday, because an economist as well, Courage Mante, has been giving us his own version of what he expects when it comes to the growth margins that's going to be, initiated under this budget.
I will not be so quick to roll out the possibility of recording a 5% growth in 2021. And I mean, first of all, if you look at our own quarterly report, which we published in the first quarter of this year, specifically in January this year, we observed and projected that growth for 2021 could range between 3.9% to 4.9%. And so if the government is seeing their growth forecast around 5%, well, that won't be too different from the upper band of our own projection, which is 4.9%. And I would not be quick to rule out their 5% growth expectations. And there are a number of reasons why we should not be that bearish on the growth outlook, even though we need to be cautious. The first point to note is that the economy contracted in the second quarter of last year and in the third quarter of last year at least. Now, based on these contractions, this low base has been created, and it will serve the basis for calculating the growth rate in 2021. And when the base is low, the change is higher. And so just on the basis of statistical phenomenon, a favorable base effect, we could see growth rebounding strongly in quarter 2 2021 and possibly in quarter 3 2021, and that could support the average growth for 2021. But having said that, if you also look at the sectors that contracted last year, one of the key sectors that contracted is manufacturing, recording an average contraction of over 5% during the first 3 quarters of last year. Now, that means that just as the economy continues to reopen, manufacturing activities, normalization of activity in the manufacturing sector should take place, and that should support growth. But then again, if you look at or listen to what the president said, there is the plan to start investing under the Ghana Cares program. Manufacturing sector is penciled as one of the sectors that they want to start investing in. So it means that if government invests in the manufacturing sector, not only would normalization of economic activity result in a recovery in growth in the manufacturing sector, but the additional investment in the sector should propel growth even stronger, and that could support overall growth for 2021. So I think that whilst I would want to be cautious, I would also not rule out a possibility of 5% or 5% plus for 2021, largely because the base effects that we expect in second quarter and third quarter could propel growth, and then additional investment from government, if it sees the light of day and if it is well targeted to the appropriate sectors and firms, could also strengthen growth in the year 2021. So I would maintain our forecast of between 3.9% at worst, 4.9% at best, but not rule out the possibility of a 5% because it's not too different from our own forecast anyway.
Analysts and economists with Data Bank. Of course, as we do know, the news has been confirmed. The majority leader in Parliament, Osechi Mensah-Bonsu, will be presenting the budget this Friday. And of course, no doubt that this is going to be his main task on Friday. The fact that COVID-19 will play a major role in deciding where funds will be apportioned. A bit of highlights of the economic constraints of COVID-19. Growth rate for 2020 was revealed from 6.8 to 0.8%. That was quite huge. Revenue shortfall estimated at 13.5 billion cedis. Expenditure on COVID also being that of 11.6 billion cedis, with the Fiscal Responsibility Act scrapped due to the pandemic. The president has outlined the priority areas of the economic management under the $100 billion Ghana Cares program. We shall hear from the president shortly on what he said on the State of the Nation's address. But then there has been this concern about the possible hike in taxes. The former chair of the Finance Committee in Parliament, Dr. Mark Esibeyeboah, has been detailing the reasons why this should not be the next way out.
The government projections for revenue. As the president indicated, in 2020, revenue declined by about 13.5 billion. Expenditure, primarily because of COVID, also went up by about 11.8 billion, giving us a whole of over 25 billion. We are in uncharted territory. We are not so sure about the way to go, and we still have to see how COVID containment and the rollout of the vaccine go.
Well, meanwhile, the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA, wants the port regime overhauled, with imports hitting high shipping fees and various tariffs being introduced. GUTA insists that a cap on the number of levies must feature in the budget.
Should set up a parallel bank that can subsidize a credit, because the cost of borrowing is very high. He said that interest rate has come down to 14%. The base rate has come down to 14.5%, but the same does not trickle down on the commercial rates. It means that what government have to do is to get this a power bank or alternative bank for businesses to outsource our credit at cheaper. That's the pain of businesses at this time. For me, at this time, if you ask me what the business community needs, I will mention 3 things, and they are all the same. And that is access to affordable credit. And that if this is structured in a manner that in the past, certain financial institutions have been designed to fast track the activities of certain sectors, like Bank for Housing and Construction, National Investment Bank, Agri Development Bank, and all that. I think that's the same thing that the president seeks to do. And I'm overly excited that this have to be fast-tracked and to make sure that we can access affordable credit from here. If they are not able to compel the commercial banks to come along with the base rate.
Well, let's still stay with matters regarding the budget, because the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association is calling on government to provide real estate developers some tax incentives ahead of the budget presentation on Friday. According to the Vice President of the Association, Engineer Stephen Deborah Ablometi, tax rebates, duty waivers, among other incentives, will help estate developers to contribute at least 2 million housing units a year to curb Ghana's housing deficit. He joins us via Zoom. We're so grateful that he joined us. First of all, we have heard the excerpts of an economist, Professor Godfred Bokpin, saying that our expectations must be modest, especially when we've been hit by COVID-19. But then your concern is justified. How bad is the situation when it comes to realtors and Ghana's housing industry?
Thank you very much. So basically, we have a situation right now at hand as developers. What we have realized is that there's actually a glut in the high-end property delivery, because each and every one of us want to engage in development where they can actually make some returns. But the point is, we have a lot of demand for buyers for affordable housing. People are not interested in developing this affordable housing for able Ghanaians who are ready to take delivery of these houses because of lack of motivation and incentives that is associated with that particular segment. So what we are looking forward for government to do for us, government having come out with strong initiative of going to set up set up a whole ministry that will focus on affordable housing to be able to deliver housing to Ghanaians. We're looking forward that we should be able to have some incentives coming out of this, for developers getting things like tax rebate, getting things like import duty waivers, developers who actually focus on affordable housing development, just so that we'll have the motivation to deliver housing to Ghanaians.
But even as you press these concerns, we've had government also call on Greta to ensure a smooth, transition when it comes to government intervention and the private sector in doling out houses in this regard. Because if there's no synchrony, of course, investment priorities could be distorted. Don't you agree?
Yes, we do agree. We've already signed an agreement with government to deliver 20,000 units of affordable houses per year. But of course, I think we need a deeper discussion on that so that we'll be able to see where we can draw the line for mutual benefit. Very key to us.
We're so grateful that you joined us. Of course, he's the Vice President of the Ghana Real Estate Developers Association. You're still watching The Marketplace with me, Charles Ayete. Let's now move on to this interesting story. Have you ever imagined resigning from a white-collar job within the first 3 years of your employment to venture into self-employment in that regard? Well, that's the story of a 35-year-old Nana Poma and Timpem. She did just that. Of course, the graduate of the paramedic and emergency care didn't hesitate to get her hands dirty after resigning from a job she describes as good paying. JoyNews' Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin reports on the humble start of this 35-year-old woman.
My name is Nana Poma Antipem. I'm 35 years of age. I was working with National Ambulance Service as an emergency medical technician. We were at the National Ambulance Service. We did hospital referrals, and I was attending to emergency scenes. But for a period of 3 years, I worked with National Ambulance. But now I've quit National Ambulance Service, and then I'm into piggery and then rabbitry.
Her love for animals pushed her into self-employment, and she does not see herself working for anyone anymore.
That is everybody, and then the decision that the person will take. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to enter into farming. And then looking at surveying and then doing some research, I think the farming, I have to just focus my attention on the farming. And because it's a labor intensive, I don't have to add up so many things to disrupt me. That is the reason why I decided to quit and then have time for this job that I'm doing.
She plans to create opportunities for others. Nana Puma bought 2 pigs at 500 cedis each to start her business. She later added 8 at a cost of 6,150 cedis, and they grew to multiply.
Actually, I started with only 2 pigs. And then later there was this NEP, the National Entrepreneurship and Innovative Plan project, which we took part in. Then we had some fun from there, and then we extended it. Now I have about 76 pigs, which an unfortunate incident happened. That is why I've landed up to this number.
Her initial challenge was how she would survive, having risked quitting her job to start farming with the knowledge that it will take months before she earns any money.
I shouldn't get less than 100,000 cedis. This job that I'm doing in the next 1 year. And the plan is to have a processing plant too. As you can see, the pens were to be 40 pens. Actually, the animals, they weren't here at first. I rented the place, they were there. We just moved them just this Thursday that we moved to this place.
She had 4 employees, but they have all left. It is now difficult for her to recruit.
They were 4, but now they are not here. Because you won't get permanent people to work for you here, maybe unless it takes some time. So we are relying on the GHS students who had completed, and they too, they had to further their studies, and they've left.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
A dream indeed. That's how we end this edition of The Marketplace. My name is Charles Ayete. Many thanks for watching.